Hi everybody, it's Saoirse and I'm back with another book review. And this one I specifically asked for. I especially love the books that have a touch of history in it, not just the lore. This particular book, it's called Travels to the Otherworld and Fantastic Other Realms, Medieval Journeys into the Beyond, and it was introduced and edited by Claude and Corine Lecouteux. I think is how to say that. Those of you who speak French will know the proper pronunciation. This has a little over 200 pages plus no index, but it has an extensive bibliography because it's got great footnotes. And that's no surprise because both Claude and Corine have been teachers at the Sorbonne. She is a scholar of linguistic studies and master of German. Oh my goodness, she must be so smart. And he is a former professor of medieval literature and civilization. Now, he has published extensively on topics ranging from lore and history, but also to paganism. So this is definitely a couple of authors that those of us who are pagans need to watch for. And this book was written by them because they wanted to put in a collection of stories about travels through Earth and to supernatural realms to reflect the medieval mind. And of course, one of the big things that people in medieval times were worried about was getting to heaven. I mean, if you think about what times were like then, they didn't have refrigeration. In parts of Europe, they were overpopulated and crammed into slums like sardines. Then you had the plague, which, killed so many people. You had King Henry VIII changing the religion of England so that he could get a divorce, and then his daughter coming in and changing it again. You had the witch trials. You had the Crusades, and everything was all about power for the church. So life was a lot more difficult back then, even if you were wealthy. They didn't have the modern medicine that we have now, and their understanding of herb lore and things was very limited, and a lot of people thought that that was of the devil. So you can understand how getting to heaven was a big part of people's mindset. So what I'm going to read to you is a little bit of a translation. It's very long, so of course we're not going to read the whole thing. It's called Tyndale the Knight, translated from Low German, I believe. The Visio Dungali was written around 1140 in Latin by an Irish monk from Regensburg, but this has Low German in parentheses. I guess I don't know what that means. It enjoyed considerable popularity, as is shown by the many illustrations into the common vernacular that exist. It recounts the tribulations of a soul that is traveling the regions of the underworld. So I'll just do a little introduction. This is basically a story of a knight named Tyndale who was not religious at all, and he would get mad at people if they tried to get him to go to church. He wouldn't go to mass. He gave his money to rogues and ruffians, basically. And finally, one day, somebody owed him money for some horses, so he went to collect the money, and the fella said he didn't have the money yet, and he asked that the loan be extended more and invited Tyndale to dinner. And so as Tyndale sat down to dinner, he basically seems to have had a stroke or a heart attack or something and was out of commission for 3 days. There was some heat on one side of his body, so they didn't bury him. And during that time, an angel walks him through different parts of hell, showing him different punishments for people who committed the type of crimes that he was supposedly guilty of. And then they show him what heaven is like. And when he comes back, he asks to take communion and is saved. So it's very interesting. There's little illustrations of angels and devils. They're so cute. And I'll just read a little bit from the Punishment of Killers and Murderers section. And he was also a knight, so he would have been considered a killer. We then made our way into a valley full of wailing and filled with furious flames and covered with incandescent fire, and the heat of the lid was much more violent than that of our fire. Countless souls were cast into this fire, where they were melted like bits of grease thrown into a cooking pan. Once the souls had melted down, they were poured through the iron lid, which was 7 ells in thickness, and then pressed through a sack as if they were wax. Once they had traveled through the cover into the fire, all the souls fell into new and indescribable torments. When I saw this great tribulation, my poor soul went dark, and I spoke to the angel. "Oh, beloved Lord, if you are fully of a mind to, can you tell me what the souls who must endure this torment have done?" The angel answered, "These torments are first and foremost intended for the killers, those who have killed their own mother and father, and for all those who, through their counsel or deeds, have contributed to their death. They then fall into an even greater torment, as you shall soon see." Then I asked the angel, "Beloved angel, must I also suffer from this brutal punishment?" The angel replied, "You will not have to endure it, although you have certainly earned it, for you too are a murderer. You must therefore pay penance and repent once you have been restored to your body, in order to avoid an even greater punishment." So that's just a little snippet from one of the stories. And what they did is they pulled things that had already been translated, and they've got them cut into sections. There's the Journey to the Borderlands, and there's some writings from Alexander the Great, including a letter that he wrote to his teacher, Aristotle. Journeys to the Otherworld, which is the section we were just in, travels into the land of fairy. That would be something the pagans especially loved. And then there's romances of adventure. They go through mountains, they go through a land of Grippa. Then there's an old Czech story, and there's a story about an adventurer priest. So for me, I always love things that have some history in it that look in. This one doesn't necessarily recount events the way that the encyclopedia would, but this shows a glimpse into the mind of the people who wrote these stories and the cultural mindset. So it's very, very interesting. And for us pagans, I mean, there is that entire chapter on travel with fairies. We're not supposed to talk about them. Shame on me. But it's interesting to remind us what the roots of Christian belief come from. You know, the medieval church very heavily influenced things clear up to modern times. And these mindsets were used during the Inquisition to persecute people who hadn't actually done what they said they did. And those of us who call ourselves witches, some of us say we are the granddaughters of the witches who you could not burn. But a modern practicing witch doesn't do what the Inquisition said we did. So it's extremely important for us to know these things. And I admit this is a very interesting and entertaining book. You can get a copy off of Amazon if you like it. And this has been Saoirse with another book review. Blessed be.